What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for September 8th, 2023. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Nothing too bad, nothing too great, a pretty standard show overall. We start from the beginning here, and I should say right off the bat, it was kind of a less is more approach that they took with this episode, which wasn't a bad thing. No John Cena, the only episode that he will not be appearing on, that he did not appear on during the SmackDown run that he's got going on till the end of October. He was in India for Superstar Spectacle. I don't think that hurt this show. I believe that was primarily a Raw roster branded event in India that will not be airing anywhere, I guess, aside from locally in India. But beyond that, it will not be, I don't think anyway, until otherwise noted, will not be popping up anywhere else. But Cena was at that event, which is why he was not on SmackDown. We still had a pretty decent show of SmackDown, pretty decent edition of SmackDown without him. It didn't really feel like it was super heavy on storyline progression, though, even though it was coming out of a pay-per-view. We had a pretty good Payback pay-per-view last weekend, but nothing really here that moved the needle for me personally. We open up the episode, women's tag team action, Shotzi and Charlotte Flair teaming up and taking on and beating the duo of Bayley and Io Sky of Damage Control. Decent match for what it was, Shotzi picking up the win for her team, which was important because if they really want to get her over as a singles babyface, she needs to be picking up wins like this. She beat Bayley last week. She beat Bayley again this week by pinning her in the tag team match. She's just not that great in the ring at this point, but that being said, it was important. If they really want to get her over with this new crazy character, she's got to rack up some wins. She beat Bayley last week. She won this match. The issue is that Io Sky in all of this is coming across like an afterthought as the WWE Women's Champion. The focus is not on the championship. In fact, my top takeaway from this matchup was really nothing about the match itself or the finish or who won or whatever. It was more the fact that Asuka distracted Io, setting up a match between the two for the WWE Women's Championship, not next week on SmackDown, but the following week. So they're setting that up for 2 weeks on the show. Their first on-air television match, their one and only, I believe, match they had against each other in WWE anyway, was at a house show that I just so happened to be at about a year ago in late August of 2022 rather. And I think Asuka won that, if I'm not mistaken. And they had a pretty good match in that time that was allotted to them on that show. Looking forward to seeing them run it back and having it be on TV for the first time. That should be a great match. They got to give Io more focus as champion, though. That's the key. She had that really good match with Zelina Vega for the championship a week or two ago. And they worked well together. And she had a championship defense on that show. But we really haven't heard a lot from Io or the tension between her and Bayley that was building up heading into SummerSlam. And they never really, or at least going into Money in the Bank, and they really haven't followed it up on it since. They should. Damage Control very likely is not going anywhere anytime soon, unfortunately. And I like all three women, but the group itself sucks. And their continued losses do not help. But as long as they can get more focus on Io as champion, that should be the key. Especially now that Bianca's not around for the time being. They can put the spotlight on Io exclusively and build up other women as well, like Shotzi, and keep Asuka in the conversation and whatnot. But it needs to be about Io and not Damage Control or Bayley. We had LA Knight in action against Austin Theory, who was out in the ring, being interrupted by Grayson Waller and Theory, who beat Knight on the show a couple of weeks ago to become the number one contender to the United States Championship. This was a good match. Knight avenging that loss from a few weeks ago. The exchange itself was really nothing out of the ordinary. LA Knight's subtle shot at Kevin Nash did not go over my head. I thought that was well done. Appreciated that for some of the dumb stuff. Nothing against Kevin Nash, but some of the dumb stuff that he was spewing about LA Knight not too long ago on his podcast. Opinions are opinions, but some of the stuff that he was saying was just inaccurate, just factually inaccurate. So I'm glad he kind of got that shot in there during the promo about the whole play versus, verb, the play, verb, adjective thing, whatever. Knight winning, Grayson Waller sat in on commentary. Speaking of Grayson Waller, he's going to be having John Cena on the Grayson Waller effect on next week's episode. So that to me sounds like we might be getting LA Knight and John Cena soon against Theory and Knight, or rather Theory and, they're all kind of the same. Theory and Waller in tag team action coming up soon on SmackDown. I know Knight is facing Miz next week in a rematch from Payback. Why? I don't know. Miz asked for it. He was granted it here, or Knight was granted the rematch by Adam Pearce. It's happening next week on SmackDown. But again, maybe that's where they set up Knight and Cena versus Theory and Waller for another time. Or maybe a six-man involving Miz as well. And then maybe they get Cody in on there. Knight, Cody, and Cena, the three biggest baby faces in WWE right now. along with Seth Rollins, obviously, against Theory, Waller, and Miz. That might not be a bad option, to be honest with you. Probably at some point, maybe at Fastlane itself, if not on TV. Although it feels like a pay-per-view match to me personally. So that was fun. We also saw LA Knight interact backstage with Paul Heyman. His first interaction on the show with Paul Heyman. And I don't think that was a coincidence. We heard the reports on Thursday that Knight is apparently in line for a massive push now that WWE is close to locking him down for a long-term deal. Apparently that was what they were waiting for. All of a sudden we hear about this and not fucking 2 or 3 months ago, and we were told that they had no plans for him. Apparently it was because, now we're hearing, because they weren't, they didn't have him locked into a long-term contract. Now they do, or they're close to doing so. Rumored to be a 5-year deal. So that's great for Knight. He's pulling in numbers, ratings-wise, merchandise-wise. Reactions are hot. The guy's a hot commodity right now, as he should be. The guy's great. So if that was the last real hurdle that he had to overcome before WWE fully got behind him, which they kind of already are, then that's terrific news. He should be beating Miz next week, obviously. And then from there, the ascent begins, or the ascent continues, rather. The question is, does he at some point challenge Roman Reigns for that undisputed WWE Universal Championship? If he's not going to win, which he probably would not, I would still do it at some point. If Knight is supposed to be the number one babyface on that blue brand after being like the 5th down on the fucking heel roster at one point, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, that's fine, but it's just it's an interesting situation because I'm not sure how long they can avoid doing that match for. I guess it's easy if Roman Reigns ain't even around, but something to keep an eye out for in the future. We had the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions of the Judgment Day in action. Finn Balor and Damian Priest against the Brawling Brutes as Butch and Ridge Holland. Pretty good match here. Brawling Brutes getting some plenty of offense and defeat. It was quite the competitive contest. Judgment Day going over, and that was not the last that we would see of Judgment Day on this show. So we also saw after the match, actually, we saw the Street Profits and Bobby Lashley confront the Judgment Day, including Dominic Mysterio, who appeared on Tuesday's NXT, in addition to Raw, and he's all over the place right now, so it's nice to see. He's getting all the exposure, including Judgment Day. Judgment Day is all over the place right now. If you don't like the group, you're probably not a fan of it, but I'm digging the group, so I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining personally. Could be headed towards a Judgment Day Profits Bobby Lashley 6-man tag team match. It looks pretty likely, and I'm not complaining. The only weird thing about it is that reportedly I had heard or had read earlier this week or last week or whatever that the Profits and Lashley were supposed to be heels. They don't get heel reactions. They don't really do anything overly heelish. I'm not exactly sure how accurate that is and why they would put them with a Judgment Day in a program if they're supposed to be heels. I'm not saying don't do the match, but at some point you could do it down the road. But you have to establish the Profits and Lashley as a heel trio first. So far, they're not coming across as that at all. We had AJ Styles and Jimmy Uso in the main event. I've seen some negative reports about the main event. I thought it was fine personally. Not a great match, but I thought it was a well-worked match for the most part. The crowd wasn't really into it. Didn't have great chemistry, but it was a step below your typical AJ Styles match, but it was a fine TV match for what it was, I thought anyway. AJ won, actually winning despite the interference from Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman and whatever. AJ still managing to pick up the victory here against Jimmy Uso and Jimmy's, I believe, first match since returning. His first match in probably 2 months since Money in the Bank. I wasn't expecting that, but, AJ, he's another one that they should be building up right now for another opportunity at Roman Reigns for that championship. I'm not sure if that's the plan. I've said this before, that it should be, and then it just doesn't materialize. But it should be. Roman and AJ have not faced off since April, or rather May, I think, of 2016. They had that great match at Extreme Rules in 2016, another terrific match at Payback, and then that was it. They never ran it back after that. And those were 2 matches 7 years ago. They're not the same performers as they were then, specifically AJ Styles. He's a lot older. Roman's still out there having amazing matches because he's also given the opportunity to have amazing matches. AJ is not, for the most part. I still think they can go in there and have a killer match for that championship. I would love to see that be the plan. The interesting thing is that AJ lost the Solo last week. He beat Jimmy Uso here. Would they really keep AJ in the chase for another 2 or 3 months? Like, it doesn't sound like Roman Reigns is going to be appearing at Survivor Series. So, do they save the match for the Royal Rumble? Again, that's in fucking 4.5 months. So that's the question. I don't know if they can wait that long. That seems like if you were watching the show weekly, this shit would get old by Fastlane or Survivor Series. So they're going to have to do the match on the sooner side. And I hope they do. Currently, Roman is not advertised for any pay-per-views until, the Rumble's not even announced yet, but he's not advertised for Fastlane, Survivor Series, no SmackDowns to my knowledge. So hopefully they do add him to Survivor Series, and that's where we get AJ and Roman. Dragging this out for another 2 months might be tough. But the whole question of whether Jimmy is or is not in the bloodline is kind of a weird thing right now as well. I kind of find it hard to care. It's interesting, I guess. And it seems like they might be headed towards faction warfare with the Judgment Day attacking AJ after this match, helping out Solo and helping him lay out AJ as the show went off the air. Again, it was intriguing, but what's going on with Jimmy in Solo? I know that's the question we're supposed to be asking, but Jimmy had even said a month ago, not a year ago, not 6 months ago, a month ago, that I didn't help Roman Reigns at SummerSlam because I wanted to rejoin the bloodline. I didn't do it for him. I did it because I don't want Jay to become you. And now he wants back in the group? That makes no fucking sense. I know they're trying to drag this out until Mania with Jimmy and Jay, but then don't start the build in August. It's as simple as that. They have just kind of screwed the pooch on that. Now we're left in a position where Solo and Jimmy are kind of expected to carry SmackDown, and I've said this before, with the remnants of the Bloodline storyline, and it's just not overly interesting. It's also just illogical, too. But again, if the end game is an AJ and Roman match, I might be able to stomach it for the next couple of months if that's where we're headed with this. But we'll see. Are we headed towards the OC against the Judgment Day? We've already seen that. Finn Balor and Damian Priest against Gallows and Anderson. Who gives a shit? Who really gives a fuck? It's possible. It gets AJ on the show. That's a positive, but the faction warfare stuff, it can be very hit or miss, as I've said before, and we'll see how this kind of plays out. And that was really SmackDown in a nutshell. There really wasn't much else to the show beyond that. There were some backstage segments and promos and stuff like that, but nothing really overly, worth noting. Like the Judgment Day, for example, had a promo before they had their match, but nothing really worth discussing. Felt more like a less is more approach type of episode. Didn't make it a great show this week, but it was better than having 7 to 8 matches / segments, and then none of them are really overly special, and we get a bunch of short matches. The matches we got this week got at least around 10 minutes, if not a little less than that. They weren't 2 to 3 minute matches, which I appreciate, and it made for, a decent show in Boston. Not the best SmackDown in recent memory by any means, but it was still a pretty solid show overall, I thought. Thank you guys for checking out my abbreviated audio review of SmackDown for this week. We'll probably be back to normal next week with the schedule and the reviewing, and there really wasn't a lot to talk about from this episode, but I didn't want to skip a week since I didn't talk about it a couple of weeks ago. I think 2 weeks ago on the weekend of All In. But, a fine show, and hopefully we can have more to discuss next week in the audio review. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the reviews. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.